Welcome. We are about to go on an incredible journey, not just into a book, but into a whole world. A world of ancient stories, powerful prophecies, and ideas that literally changed everything. We're going to unlock the secrets of one of the most important texts ever created, the Hebrew Bible.
So, let's just dive right in, okay? When you picture the Bible, what pops into your head? For most of us, it's probably one single giant book, right? With a heavy leather cover. But what if that's not the whole picture? Not even close.
What if that one book was actually a doorway? A doorway into a massive ancient library. Just imagine stepping inside. You're not surrounded by pages, but by dozens and dozens of individual scrolls, written by all sorts of people over hundreds of years, each one telling a different piece of a much, much bigger story.
So here's our game plan for exploring this library. First, we'll find out what it's actually called and how it's all laid out. Then, we're going to pull the very first scroll off the shelf, Genesis. After that, it's time to become historical detectives, listen to the amazing voices of the prophets, and figure out how this whole collection came together. And most importantly, we'll see what this all means for us today.
Okay, first stop. Every great library needs a name, right? Well, this one is called the Tanakh. Let's figure out what that means and how its shelves are set up.
The word Tanakh is actually a super clever acronym. It's kind of like how we say NASA for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Each part of the word stands for one of the three main sections of the library. T is for Torah, N is for Nevi'im, and K is for Ketuvim. It's a genius way to remember the whole structure. And here's what that looks like. First, you've got the Torah, which means instruction. This is where you find all the foundational stories and laws. Then there's the Nevi'im, or prophets, which is full of these powerful divine messages. And finally, the Ketuvim, or writings, that's a beautiful mix of poetry, history, and wisdom. 3 sections, one amazing library.
And just look at this. This is so important, because it reminds us that these were real physical things, not just ideas floating in the air. Every single word was copied by hand, letter by painstaking letter, on a scroll just like this. Can you even imagine the love and dedication that took? These weren't just books, they were treasures.
All right, let's grab the very first scroll in that first section, the Torah. Its Hebrew name is Bereshit, in the beginning, but you probably know it by its Greek name, Genesis. Genesis is, well, it's epic. It starts as big as you can possibly get, with the creation of the entire universe. It's this huge, cosmic story. But then something amazing happens. The camera lens zooms way, way in. It shifts from telling the story of all humanity to the intensely personal story of one man, Abram, and his family. It's an incredible change in focus that sets the stage for everything that comes next. Just brilliant storytelling. Okay, now for a really fun part. How do we even know where these stories came from? This is where we get to be detectives and look for clues in history and archaeology to piece together the world where this incredible library was first created.
Whoa, okay, look at this timeline. This is fascinating. So take a book like Judges. The events it's talking about, they happened all the way back around 1250 BCE. But the book itself didn't get written down until about 600 BCE. That's a gap of over 600 years. So how did the stories survive? Simple. People told them. Around campfires, in villages, from parents to children, for century after century. And the detectives have found more clues. It looks like the first Israelites actually came from right there, inside the land of Canaan. And here's the kicker, the real smoking gun. There are poems inside the Bible, like the Song of Deborah, that are written in a much, much older form of Hebrew than the rest of the text. It's like finding a fossil inside a rock. It's a linguistic fossil that proves these stories were being told long, long before they were ever written down.
Okay, let's head over to the second major section of our library, the Nevi'im, the prophets. And these books, they feel different. They're not just about history. They are passionate, raw, and personal messages about justice and faithfulness and what it means to be in a relationship with God.
Now in this section, you'll hear about the minor prophets. And that name is a little confusing, because you might think it means they're less important. Not at all. It's just about length. A scholar named Augustine of Hippo basically pointed out that their scrolls were just a lot shorter than the huge ones from prophets like Isaiah. So think minor in size, but absolutely major in impact. And to really get the power of these prophets, you have to hear the story of Hosea. He was told by God to marry a woman who was unfaithful to him. his own personal pain, his own heartbreak, and his decision to keep loving her. It all became a living, breathing metaphor for God's own relationship with the people. The prophets didn't just speak a message, they lived it.
So you've got all these different scrolls, right? History, laws, poems, prophecies, which leads to the million-dollar question. How did they all get gathered into one single collection? Who decided which books got to be on the official shelf of this sacred library?
Well, it was definitely a process. It didn't happen overnight. First, you had hundreds of years of oral stories. Then, scribes started the huge job of writing them down on scrolls. After a while, those scrolls were gathered into collections, like the Torah. And finally, the community, the people themselves, decided which of these books were the most sacred, the most authoritative. And that's how the library was finalized.
All right, for our last section, let's bring all this home. Let's think about why they went through all this trouble. Why were these particular stories so important to save? The answer, it turns out, has everything to do with the stories in our own families.
Think about it. Why did they work so hard to preserve these scrolls? It's because the stories inside were precious. They were the heart of the community's identity, their wisdom, their memory. They mattered. And that gets you thinking. Every single family has its own treasure chest of stories, doesn't it? Its own sacred library.
So that brings us to this week's middle challenge, a chance for us to work on our character. We're going to become story collectors. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to find an older relative, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, and just ask them to tell you a story from their life. When we really listen, we're practicing kavod, which is Hebrew for respect, and we're making the kesher, that special family connection, even stronger.
And when you do that, you're doing the exact same thing those ancient scribes and storytellers did. You're treating your family's history like the treasure that it is. You are honoring your very own sacred library.
So we'll leave you with that to think about. In the unique, incredible library of your own family, which story is waiting to be told? Which treasure needs to be passed on? Thank you for joining us for this journey into an ancient library. We hope these ancient truths help you and your family improve your own dimensions this week. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please like, subscribe, and share which part of the journey touched your soul in the comments. We'll see you in the next chapter.